Who's friends with all the night dreamers, talking to you at night. Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFO'S, that's right. Gary's talk show radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Dreamers talk show will fix your despair. If you want to talk conspiracies, Night Dreamers is for you. Top secret case, alien space, it's Gary with the news. Tune in on the radio, don't let Big Brother know. They're listening to everything, even Gary's late night show. If you need a friend to talk to, he will always be there. The Night Show Dreamers talk show will fix your despair, because Gary's talking to you at night.
Gary here, and you're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. You know, science, they keep finding new things every day, every hour, every minute. Well, keep looking up in the sky, because you'll never know what they might find next. Well, we got a great show lined up for you, but before that, we got Guy Ticker with the news. So, Guy, take it away.
Now, the latest news. I'm Guy Ticker, Night Dreams Talk Radio Network News Director, Anchor Reporter, and Staff Phlebotomist. DARPA is working on a way to put humans into suspended animation. In science fiction, it's not uncommon to hear of technologies capable of putting a person into suspended animation so they don't age during long-haul space missions. In the real world, we've yet to come up with a way to achieve this, but that hasn't stopped DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, from having a good go. Together with researchers from Harvard University, the agency is looking for a way to pause the clock, in particular for patients suffering from time-critical injuries or illnesses. If they could be placed into suspended animation or hypersleep, it would give doctors more time to treat them, or enable injured soldiers on the battlefield to survive until help arrives. Cooling a patient's body down to slow its metabolic processes has long been used in medical settings to reduce injuries and long-term problems from severe conditions. But it can only currently be done in well-resourced hospitals, study co-author Michael Super said. Achieving a similar state of biostasis with an early administered drug like DNP could potentially save millions of lives every year. The new research aims to use the Alzheimer's drug Donepezil, DNP, to induce this effect on demand outside of a hospital setting. But there is still a lot of work to be done. Interestingly, clinical overdoses of DNP in patients suffering from Alzheimer's disease have been associated with drowsiness and a reduced heart rate, symptoms like suspended animation. So said study lead author Maria Plaza Oliver. She continued, however, this is the first study, to our knowledge, that focuses on leveraging those effects as the main clinical response and not as a side effect. More to come, I'm certain. I don't want to keep you in suspense, though. I'm Guy Ticker. The news is brought to you by Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. To submit a story or to get all the latest news, go to nightdreamstalkradio.com, because the truth is out there.
Well, we are back, and you know what? It feels really good to get back on the air after being off 2 weeks vacation. JC, well, what were you doing during those 2 weeks?
Well, I was doing some fishing and barbecuing and just all kind of crazy stuff, Gary.
Well, early today at 12:39 a.m., guess what? An asteroid crashed into Earth. Not much actually made it to the Earth, and it broke up and caught on fire before it hit, but near the Philippines.
Yeah, listen, that's some of those ones. Was that one they didn't know it was coming, or it was one of those that they said, well, it won't hit, but then it did?
No, they didn't know a couple hours before. That's the scary part. They only knew a couple hours before.
Yeah, it's probably one of those ones that come in from behind the sun. But the thing is, even if they know it's coming, is there anything we can really do to stop it?
Pray.
Okay, well, we'll give it a go.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You got a quarter in your pocket?
No, you want me to get somebody to make a call?
Well, no, I was thinking, I'd trade you $1 for that quarter here. That quarter in probably about 3 months might be worth more than $1.
That could be, might already be in some places. I'll tell you.
Well, in the United States, that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, there's a lot I've been seeing that all over the place. I don't know if they're putting it in people's heads so it does happen, or they're trying to warn us, or what's going on.
I think they're just going to try to slow it down before the elections.
Oh, you know what? There you go. It all leads up to election time. Everybody pulls out the stops.
You know what we're going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about, John Lear. Guess who? Guess who else?
I'm going to say
Bob Lazar.
Yeah, Bob.
And we're going to talk to our good friend, James Goodall.
Yeah, James, he's great when he's on. I'm looking forward to it. I know a lot of people looking forward to hear what he's got to say. Listen, he has interconnected with some really intriguing people over his lifetime, I got to tell you.
Yeah. Well, so did John Lear, I'll tell you that one.
Yeah.
You know what? We're going to be talking about, Area 51, how it came about, who created it, and what was going on there. There's rumors out there. Maybe we can kind of dispel some of them tonight, that there's chambers under Area 51 with live ETs and dead ETs. There's also talk about a tunnel that goes from the Pacific Ocean to Area 51. I don't buy that one, but the one with chambers, we're going to talk about that too. So let's let the audience know a little bit about our guest.
How did a kid who grew up in the middle of a former apricot orchard, that's now called Silicon Valley, end up as one of the world's leading experts on the Lockheed Skunk Works, Area 51, and things that go bump in the night? Well, for Jim Goodall, it started with a handful of random events. His very first exposure, and ultimately his love for all things skunk works and airplanes in general, began with a brief encounter that cemented his fascination and love for airplanes. The time was 1950 or 51. Jim lived in a duplex not far from what was the small San Jose Municipal Airport. He was about 5 years old and had gone to bed just before sunset. As he was getting settled in, his dad went into his room and said, "There's something coming, and I think you should see it." They went outside and saw not one, not two, but 24 Corvair B-36 Peacemaker heavy bombers on their way to Travis Air Force Base. Jim was hooked. Moved forward a few years, and his family now called Los Altos, California, home. In 1954, his best friend's dad was commander of Moffett Field Naval Air Station, at the time one massive base with over 400 aircraft assigned there. On one particular day, his friend said he had something to show him. There was an area roped off with curtains shielding something very special. There were no guards, just a sign that read, "Off Limits." Too tempting for a couple of 7-year-olds. Behind the curtain was the still-secret Lockheed XF-104 Starfighter. Jim's friend then threw down the gauntlet. Get in the cockpit. So he did. And the latch malfunctioned. He was stuck. The only way out was to call the Marines and the Shore Patrol, and they were pissed. Nearly 70 years later, Jim reports, his butt still hurts. Fast forward to March of '64. Jim was an 18-year-old airman second class on temporary duty at Edwards Air Force Base. At approximately 3:15 p.m., Jim Goodall saw what was to change his life forever. On the XB-70 test pad was what he first thought was the North American X-15 rocket plane. But the people were way too small. Much to his amazement, he had his first glimpse of the incredible Mach 3 Plus Blackbird in full afterburners, the YF-12A. And Jim has never been the same.
Well, Jim, does your butt actually still hurt after all these years? Are you there, Jim?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
I put you to sleep, didn't I? That's one thing.
Oh no, but
this
I was
show
still
does.
listening. I thought you were going to say something else, and I'm getting an echo.
Oh, that echo should go away after about 10 seconds or less.
Okay. Yeah, it was March 10th, 1964. It was 3:15 in the afternoon, and I could recall it like it happened this morning. I mean, it is a when you're a guy who joined the Air Force specifically because I'm fascinated by airplanes, the spookier the better. That was like getting hit with a bolt of lightning, except that lightning was from the Skunk Works, and it was in the form of a 105-foot long, 140,000 pound Mach 3 interceptor. And the YF-12 was the fighter version of what became the SR-71. They built 3 of them. Some people say it was also they were using the YF-12 as a cover for A-12 and SR-71 because it was in a cordoned area just for the YF-12. And this allowed Lockheed and the CIA to show Congress critters what they're spending their money on. And it had the same capabilities as the A-12 Ox Cart or the SR-71 Senior Crown, but it was something they felt was they could show that to the public because it wasn't a strategic reconnaissance platform. But it was one hell of a fighter. If it had gone operational, there would have been 2 bases. One would be on Cape Cod, and they were going to have a wing of F-12Bs. That would be the operational version, and they were going to be approximately 45 assigned to Cape Cod, and then 45 assigned to a place where I spent 10 years, and that was Payne Field in Everett, Washington.
Oh, Payne Field.
I don't think anybody in the Pacific Northwest knew that there was at one time in their life there was a potential of having a wing of Mach 3 fighters in the Pacific Northwest. But that came to an end when Robert Strange McNamara, probably one of the worst secretaries of defense that we've ever had, at least before. And he canceled it because there wasn't a need.
Yeah.
And there was. I mean, there was from day one. And Kelly said not counting government supplied equipment. Now, this is all in $1960. Which is ridiculous because you could buy a house for, maybe $15,000 in the middle of Silicon Valley, in Los Altos or Mountain View or Sunnyvale. So he said, I will build you 100 F-12Bs for $14 million each, not counting government supplied equipment, which would be the radar, all the avionics, and of course the engines. And the engines are a bulk of the cost. They are with commercial airlines as well. The most expensive single component is the motor.
Oh, yeah.
And but that's where it began. It all began on that particular day of my fascination and obsession with the Lockheed Skunk Works, black airplanes, and things that go bump in the night.
When you really think about it, Jim, about the technology, some of this technology goes back to about 1959, isn't it? And it really advanced for that time of era.
The Blackbird was the last operational military aircraft to be designed exclusively with slide rules. Now, if you don't have gray hair or white hair or no hair on top of your head, you may sort of remember what a slide rule was. Back in the 1950s, they didn't have pocket calculators. If you needed a calculator to do a lot of number crunching, you got a Monroe. I can't remember what the model is, but the thing is, it's got to be about 20 inches wide, and it was all rotating numbers. And my dad was a mad scientist, so he had one, and. That's how. But he also had his what he called his supercomputer. It was I think a 32-inch or a 34-inch long K&E engineer's slide rule.
Yeah,
and he used it. That was he didn't go anywhere without it. And when he was teaching postgraduate engineering at Stanford, The TI had just come out, and I don't know what the exact year was, but in the 60s, came out with their first engineering grade calculator. It was $700 back in the day. I mean, $700 when you can buy a car for $2,500. And my dad thought it was fascinating. He said, "We'll have a competition." And the kid was Japanese. He had his top student put an equation up on the blackboard, and the ones that are you can flip over, or turn them around and put this problem up there, and to see who beat who. And my dad just whooped the pants off the Japanese kid. I mean, it took my dad about 6 or 7 minutes, and it took the Japanese kid maybe double that time. So 7 or 10, 12, maybe 14 minutes. And the poor Japanese kid was just devastated. My dad said, "Hey, I was born with this thing in my hand. I know it inside and out. Your calculator, your TI calculator is brand new. In a week or less, you'll be able to whip me on it. But I just wanted to show you what old technology could do against new technology if you have someone who knows knows what he's doing with the slide rule the calculator."
I had one of those back in school, and I tell you what, I thank God little calculators came out. The first calculator I had still wasn't a battery operated one. It was one where you had like a little rod, you'd stick and slide things up and down, but it was pocket.
Yeah. It's. I'm going to be 80 here this spring coming up, so I've seen a lot of technology change. I mean, I saw technology change in our one-car garage in Los Altos. My dad actually designed the first crystal growers for Fairchild Camera, which was starting a new division called Fairchild Semiconductor, which turned into another little unknown company that moved to Beaverton, Oregon. It starts with an I. Oh yeah, Intel. So I was there when we were building the crystal grower controllers in our garage, and in 1956 I was 11 years old. I learned how to solder. I learned how to tie. You didn't have zip ties back then. They had your wax string.
Oh yeah.
But enough of that. We wanted to talk about how did Area 51 come to be.
Well, I want to know because a lot of people don't even really know what it was about. Some people think it was because of the CIA, which was a big hunk of it. But how did it come about?
In 1953, I think that's when the Korean War came to an end. President Eisenhower contacted Prime Minister Khrushchev, Nikita Khrushchev, and said we would like to put together an open skies agreement. We both have nuclear weapons, and what better way to keep our adversaries honest is to allow with predetermined agreements and advance notice the ability to fly over any of our military installations, and we will supply the airplane to do that. It would be a NC-135 or a WC-135, and Khrushchev turned him down. I said, flat right, said, "You fly any airplane over our airspace, we'll shoot it down." So that was the beginning of the requirement for the U-2. And a number of companies submitted proposals to the CIA. You had Bell, which had the X-16. It was a long-wing twin-engine aircraft. You had Martin. It wasn't Martin Marietta back then. It was just Martin. And they were going to build an advanced version of the RB-57, which they eventually did. They actually did a long wing version of it, but it wasn't very successful. It wasn't until General Dynamics went and modified the RB-57s or the B-57s into the RB-57F. and that's the long wing ones. They have two big turbofans and two auxiliary jets, and they can fly to 70,000 feet. And NASA operates 2 or 3 of them. They built about a half a dozen of them back in the day. But there needed to be a platform that allowed for the overflight to fly high enough, hopefully with a low radar cross section, but high enough so the Soviet fighters and the Soviet air defense systems couldn't knock it down. So eventually, Lockheed had submitted a modified F-104 fuselage, single engine, but it wasn't much different from the regular F-104, other than maybe the engine was going to be modified, and the wing. It was, instead of having very short, stubby wings, I think from the fuselage out, it's only about 7 feet. They were going to put like 120 or 115 foot wingspan on it.
Wow.
And that was rejected. And then Kelly submitted another unsolicited proposal to build what became known as the U-2. Now, this was, again, in 1953. And they built a U-2 in relatively short order because it was a fairly simple airframe. But they needed a place to build it, and they didn't want to do it at Burbank. And then they needed a place to flight test it because there wasn't any secure flight test facilities that in the U.S. So Kelly Johnson, in I think it was mid '53, asked his chief pilot Tony Lear, his top engineer Doris Kammer, and a couple of other engineers, says, I want you to go out and I want you to find the most remote dry lake somewhere here in the desert Southwest so we could open up a base there. And it has to be surrounded by mountains. It had all sorts of criteria. So they went to Mud Lake, which is outside of Tonopah. They went up near Pyramid Lake. They went every dry lake bed you can think of in Arizona, parts of California, of course, all of Nevada, and even parts of Utah and New Mexico. And what they finally decided, that this dry lake bed in the middle of absolute nowhere and is surrounded by mountain ranges would be the ideal place to build a base. So they landed I think it was a beach. It was a twin beach. They landed on Groom Lake. It was there was some debris there from just mining times and whatever, and a lot of dust on the dry lake bed. And they got out and walked around and said, "We are in the middle of nowhere." So they flew back to Burbank. They told Kelly, and they said, "I think we found the place." So they got in. They got back into the Twin Beach. I don't know if it was the same day or the next day. Probably the next day. They flew out to Area 51. They flew around the area and then landed on the dry lake bed. And Kelly sort of looked at him and said, "This may be too remote." I mean, there was no roads anywhere near it. So, but they decided that was the place. So once they secured the location from the federal government, it was called a number of things. It was Watertown Strip. It's been referred to as Kelly's Ranch. It's been called Elvis's house, or the box, that place you can't get there from here, to quote Bill Park. So they decided that's what they needed. So they started construction of a runway, and they took down 3 large hangars that were at Hawthorne, Nevada. That's an ammunition depot. There used to be a fairly large aircraft contingency there from the Navy. And they dismantled the 3 big hangars. They trucked them all down. They built a road, and they built up Area 51 as it was when the first U-2 took off. It had I think a 7,000 or 6,500 foot runway, few outbuildings, all the living quarters for the contractors and for Lockheed and the pilots. They were just like airstreams. They had about 30 of them or 40 of them. The place was desolate. And when the guys went there, and there were there weren't any women. That was this was before enlightenment, if you want to call it that. There weren't any women assigned to the facility, and they back then, even in the early 70s, you could actually drive down to the edge of the lake bed, but that was before the A12 and stuff. So they started building in. The first U2s arrived by C-124 from Burbank. They would turn off all the lights at Burbank Airport and all the lights around the Skunk Works. They would bring the C-124 up close to the hangar door. They would go in there. They would load the U-2. They had special trailers that would allow it to be moved inside another airplane. And they flew them one by one into Area 51. But they also didn't want anybody at Burbank to be aware of the fact that the U-2 was not being built at the Skunk Works. It was built right outside of Bakersfield in Oilfield, California. And it was a nondescript one-story light manufacturing facility. And I don't know what it did before or after. The building's still there, and it's still a going concern, but they're not building anything spookier. So that was the beginning of Area 51. And then once they started flying the U-2s, they realized, this place really is a super place to operate aircraft you don't want the general public or the bad guys to know. And this is before satellites.
But Jim, I got to ask you a question. Okay, but
sure.
It wasn't long after that, the rumors, like of a down air, a UFO, it was found in 1947, supposedly was taken to Area 51. And that's...
go on. Go on.
That's when all these rumors started, back around at the same time frame, about, strange craft.
Well, I mean, people who initially saw the U-2, it flew to 70,000 feet. So all you would see is and they were natural aluminum. So if they're flying during the day, all you would get is a glint or a bright spot as it going across the sky, and it's so high up there, even with binoculars, you couldn't tell what it was. So that's where some of the rumors that they're flying UFOs out of, or flying saucers out of Area 51. And I hope they don't want to pop your bubble, but they haven't flown UFOs in and out of Area 51. Other places, and at least one place in close proximity to Area 51, which is referred to as S4.
S4, yeah.
But not out of Area 51 itself. And from there, because they had built a new runway, a bigger runway than the original U-2 runway. They had improved the operation somewhat, more permanent buildings. But when they were, fast forward, we're now in 1960, 59, 60. They're developing the replacement for the U-2. It's called Oxcart. That's my favorite airplane, the A-12 Blackbird, and that was a CIA project. And they built a new part of the base. They call it Baja. It's south of the main base, and that's where the A-12s operated out of. And but they moved. They had a number of Soviet fighters that were acquired through clandestine means, or if someone decided they were going to, I don't want to fly with these guys anymore, so I have enough gas to fly to America type of situation. So they had MiG-15s, 17s, 19s, 21s, 23s. They almost got Belenko's MiG-25, but the Russians put up such a fuss. They had dismantled it completely, and they were trying to figure out, why they feared this airplane. And after they took apart the MiG-25, they didn't fear it anymore. They knew what it could and couldn't do. it could get up to Mach 3 for maybe about 90 seconds before the engines were trashed. On the other hand, the Blackbird flew sustained Mach 3.2 for an hour and a half at a time in between air refuelings. Now you say, well, you can't get it very far in an hour and a half. Well, if you're doing 2,200 miles an hour, yeah, you can. It's a lot of distance.
Okay,
so,
Jim, we need to take a break. So we'll be right back with Jim, and we need to switch over, though, about, because people want to know. There's so much rumors about Area 51 and Groom Lake and S4 about underground chambers which have UFOs in it and ETs and bodies of ETs, live ETs and all that. So let's talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to get into what you did with my late friend, John Lear. You were naughty boys, and we're going to get back with that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio.
Time slips. A haunted office building on a haunted street. A haunted coal town. Mysterious black cats. Unexplained light anomalies. UFOs, UAPs in the air and on the ground. Bridges in liminal spaces. Cryptids, shamans, and a werewolf. Disclosure. You don't need a ranch in Utah. All this and more happens in rural southwestern Pennsylvania. Coming soon from Haunted Hills and Hollows 1 and 2 author Kevin Paul, Politics and the Paranormal in Greene County, Pennsylvania. Available this fall on Amazon and at other fine booksellers. Take a journey of adventure and discovery for the enigmatic giants of the forests. Read On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. The author himself describes it this way. Having found possible Sasquatch evidence, namely trees driven into the ground upside down, thought to be territory markers, led me to investigate this creature in my native Ohio. Several years and many forays into Bigfoot territory, I have found incredible evidence, which inspired my book, On the Trail of Bigfoot. Bigfoot is alive and has many fantastic abilities. The evidence is out there for all to see, but you need to know what to look for. My book will inspire those who have answered the call to seek this elusive creature, the Bigfoot. The truth is out there. Read On the Trail of Bigfoot by Mike Dupler. Available now at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and IndieBound.org. Beaming to you like a whirlwind. In syndication and on all the apps worldwide. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network.
And we are back with James Goodall. One thing, James, a lot of talk has been about, there's a lot of mines around Grooms Lake, around those hills, old abandoned mines. And there's been so much talk where they have actually built something under Area 51, underground chambers where they house, in S4, where they house UFOs, alien bodies, live aliens, all that. But, all the research I found, it's possible. I mean, but how would they have actually excavated all that dirt? How could they got rid of it? And all the rocks and boulders and to create underground chambers under Area 51 without people noticing it. I don't think it really happened. What do you think?
Well, you're in the middle of the Nevada test site. The general public is not privy to that. The general public typically can't overfly that area without having the snot scared out of them. So there wasn't any reason to hide anything when they were doing any excavation. Now, on the west side of the Papoose Range, the Papoose Range is the backdrop for Area 51 if you view it from Whitesides or Freedom Ridge. Both those locations have been taken. or if you want to get a good distance away on the top of Tikaboo Peak. But the facility over on the west side, the Nevada test site has the ability to bore 36-foot diameter holes through solid granite for doing their underground testing at the Nevada test site. They detonated almost 11, or maybe a little over 1,100 nuclear weapons there over the course of from the first detonation to the last underground detonation. So they have the ability. They built Yucca Mountain nuclear waste storage facility, which has never been used, but they used the boring machines to do all that, and they had the ability to do that. I interviewed a former SR-71 pilot who had chased a UFO, 1972, 73 timeframe, right around, either December or January of those 2 years. And he was, after he retired from the Air Force, now the UFOs left him in the dust. But after he retired, he bounced around in a few places, and he ended up applying for a job as facility manager at an unknown location in the desert. And what it turns out, he became the facility manager at Area 51.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, are there any underground facilities at Area 51? And he said, no, there's not. We have the ability on the other side of the range to drill big holes in the ground and through mountains, but not here. He says, because my responsibility was everything from a paint locker to the biggest hangar they had there, which was hangar 18. And there was nothing said, but there were people that he had talked to indicating that there, and he saw equipment designated for a location S4. It would come into Area 51 either by military transport, unloaded, and then it would be delivered to other places. So S4 is, as far as Dave was concerned, S4 was a real location. This is Dave Fruhoff. So but the ability to drill, to dig holes in solid rock it's known technology. But everybody that I know that has worked at Area 51, when I ask them, do you believe in UFOs? And all of them say, absolutely, positively, they do exist. And the thing about Bob wasn't there all that long, but he was there long enough to know that he didn't really want to be there. They were given mind-controlled drugs as they left, and the antidote was when they came back on Monday. I don't know if they flew the Janet flights in, because he said he'd fly in a commercial aircraft into Area 51, and then they'd by a school bus or by other vehicles take him into S4. So I don't know exactly where the entrance is to S4, but it is in the Papoose Range. And to more or less validate Bob's where he said the location was, two different validations. One was a Mormon missionary, he was trying to track the path of the lost Mormon tribe, and he sort of ended up being stopped just south of Area 51 and into the Nevada test site. They wouldn't let him go, and he was real determined to find out where this path, where all these settlers were lost, because they never arrived at their destination. So he went on the west side, came over the fence at Mercury at night, and worked his way in to be fairly close to Yucca Flats and Frenchman Flats. And one night he's underneath an undercropping because he didn't want the helicopters to catch his infrared signature if they were using IR, and he just wanted to be for protection. And he woke up one night in the middle of the night because I think he had to go hit the head. So he's standing up, he's doing his business, and he's looking across the desert from his location. It was east-northeast. And he sees it looks like a hangar door opening up a good distance away, far enough where he couldn't see anything. And he didn't have binoculars because he was just looking for the tribe. And it was open just for a few minutes, and then it closed. The next morning, he got up and he tried to see if he could see anything, and he couldn't see anything but the Papoose Range and a lot of desert. Fast forward to 1981, 82 time frame. I got a buddy of mine who is he was one of the first enlisted guys on the F-117 program. And they had a downtime. I think Ridenour's F-117 crashed, and they had to find out why. Crashed on takeoff. So he had everybody, all the maintenance guys that worked on the 117, they didn't have anything to do. So he had a Humvee. He and 2 or 3 other guys decided their security badges was good for the entire Nevada test site, to include Area 51 and anywhere else they wanted to be. So they just drove around the Papoose Range, and they're on this dry lake bed, and they're looking for artifacts from pioneer days. They're looking for bottles, they're looking for tools, or anything of any value, or just for fun. And they were just sort of kicking around. They were in a military Humvee. They're in their utilities, the BDUs. I think that's what they called them back in the days. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, said a group of black-clad security people, all of them armed. "What are you doing here?" "So, we just had some time off. We're just driving around looking for junk." Said, "You don't belong here. You leave right now." This is after they saw their IDs and realized they weren't bad guys. They actually worked at Area 51. And my buddy said, "We don't know where they came from. There were no vehicles. I couldn't see any way that they could been hiding or come out of the mountain. There were no doors. It was just mountain down to dirt, and that was it." So it was here the Mormon, the Mormon missionary saw this place. My buddy, I won't even say his first name, but my buddy was there with other guys and got chased away. So that just adds validity to what Bob said. And an exciting thing is going to happen probably around Christmas. And it's going to be called Bob Lazar, the first whistleblower. And I've seen some of the clips. I'm a technical advisor to the movie. I don't know what I was technical advising on, but that's the title they gave me. And Bob has said that he has seen some of the clips and said it's given him goosebumps. Said he could smell the hangar on some of the video. He said it was so realistic. It was. He said he can hardly wait to see the real thing. Now I'm going to be at Bob Lazar's on September 14th. Oh, which is only 10 days from today.
Yeah, that time goes by fast too.
And I hope I'm going to spend at least a day, a night, and a day there, or I may spend 2 nights there. They want to meet my wife, and my wife would she wants to see what this Bob Lazar guy looks like. And Bob is just a sweetheart, and his wife Joy is as delightful as they come. I mean, they're just incredible people. So I'm hoping that they're going to be there. They said I'll call them the day before I head up there. My wife and I are driving to Seattle. We're going to go up. She hasn't been up there in 5 years, and she spent most of her adult life in Seattle, so she wants to visit some friends. And as she may not remember them a year from now, She has real severe memory issues, and but that's a millstone I have to carry on my back. And this is something we need to do. So I'm going to go see my brother, who I haven't seen in 1,000 years, and spend some time in Seattle. But what I hope to do, if Bob will allow it, is I want to do a walking tour of his lab. This is a 20 by 40 foot commercial building on his property, and he has 10 stations more or less in his lab, as he calls it. And I want him to stop at each one and explain what he does at each one of these places in his lab. He's very well organized, and I'm hoping he'll give me the thumbs up. And if he does say, I don't want to narrate, and I said, well, I'll walk through and look at the whole lab and let everybody see what you have there, and I'm going to see if that's going to be okay. And I'm hoping once the movie is out that he will agree to be on other podcasts other than Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Wow. We've been trying to get him on here, but so far, Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I would love to have him on every single platform I know of, just to promote his movie, and the fact that it's Bob Lazar. That's all I have to say. I mean, it's and he's such a delightful person. He is soft spoken, but he is brilliant. And what a lot of people don't realize is that he also has a photographic memory. And I asked him when I was up there last year, I said, I got a question. Do you remember what you told me the day we met when we're heading over your house from John Lear's house? He said, you mean that I didn't believe in UFOs? I said, yeah, that. Do you remember saying that? And he said, absolutely. So, because he had said, this is before he went to work out in the desert, says, I don't believe in UFOs. And I feel sorry for our friend John Lear, that poor SOB, believes in flying saucers. Says, I'm a nuclear physicist. If I can't prove it mathematically or put my hands on it, it doesn't exist. And you can put a gun to my head and tell me that UFOs are real, and I would still say no.
Well, you mentioned John Lazar because we only got about 10 minutes. Time goes by so fast talking to you. John Lear told me that in S4, they do supposedly have crashed UFOs and alien bodies. Did he ever talk to you about that?
John mentioned that. I asked Bob if he saw did he see any aliens? He said, I saw posters in the hallways said we're here, and it would be a gray standing next to it, to someone who's 6 foot tall, and the grays are 4 foot or even shorter. And they referred to them as the kids because they were so small. But did you ever see one? He said, nope. I saw a lot of references to them, but I never actually saw one. And he said, at one particular day, all the interconnecting bays internally, the doors were open. And Bob said there was a total of 9 different craft there at S4, and all of them were different. They were all different configurations. Bob also indicated that his sports model was found at an ancient site. So in other words, it's thousands of years old. He said when you look on the outside, it's 30 some odd feet across. When you stick your head into the hatch, it's like looking into a ballroom.
But
it's
you
huge.
mean it's like Doctor Who's little phone booth? You go into it and it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, it says it would really confuse the hell out of somebody if they didn't have their head screwed on tight.
Now we need that technology. You know that we could these tiny houses. You could go in a tiny house and have a ballroom.
Yeah.
Now, I got to ask you another question. John Lear said that you and him would sneak on Area 51 at night. Is that true?
Oh, I mean, we snooped on Area 51 during the day, during the night. One of the funny things we did, we had been out playing rat patrol out near Tonopah, and we had stopped at a little alien and grabbed something to eat, and we decided we're going to take the back road into Area 51, and we made it through the foothills, and we're coming down, and you could see the base, and we see a little white shack not that far, from us as we came around this bend, but you had a full view of the base of Area 51. And we come up there and we stop at the guard shack, and a nice looking young guy comes out. He looks like he's a varsity football player, good shape, nice looking, someone if you had a daughter, hey, it'd be a nice guy for her to marry. That's the type of personality he had. And he said, "What are you guys doing here?" I said, "Well, we're bird watchers, and we just saw this road. We decided to drive down and see how far we can go." And he said, "Well, no, there's no birds out here that you want to see." And we had our cameras around our necks. And about that, as we're talking to this young kid, another guy comes out of the guard shack, putting a magazine into his M16, loading around into the chamber. And this guy's a reject from the NFL because he's too big. He had no neck, and he heard John say, "Hey, can we take some pictures of the guard shack?" With, of course, Area 51 behind.
Yeah.
And the big guy says, "If you do, you're going to be interviewed by some very unfriendly people, and you're not going to enjoy it one bit." I looked at John and said, "Time to go."
Well,
So we jumped.
Oh, go ahead.
We jumped in this rented Cadillac Seville. That's what we were playing rat patrol with, and we're heading out of Area 51 on the back road in from Rachel, and we're doing about 70 miles an hour on the dirt road, and an A7 Corsair 2. They also call them sloughs. Stubby little ugly fellows. There's other terms for it. Came over at about 25 feet, probably at 500 knots, and almost blew us off the road. I mean, it was the most exciting thing to happen to us since we had little red dots on our chest at the fence line in Tonopah. A couple of years later. So I mean, John and I did a lot of crazy stuff in and around Area 51. And I actually walked in about 3 miles from the north end. I had a poncho that was made of your survival blankets, and the fraud that I was married to actually sewed some infrared suppressive camouflage, desert camouflage material on it, made a poncho out of it. So if I heard a helicopter, I could just squish down into a ball, and I would have I would be a low observable. I would be a stealth spy. But I got in about 3 or 4 miles in, and it was 30 degrees out, and I was sopping wet. I was sweating so much, and not because I had the poncho on, because that was mostly open. It was that I was so nervous about getting, all of a sudden, having little red dots on me and hearing click, click, bang.
Yeah, you don't hear the bang part. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know that. But
that's the type of blowjob. That's the type of blowjob you don't want. You know that.
Yeah, I turned around and headed back, and when I took my poncho off, my shirt was sopping wet. I probably lost 10 pounds. But when John Andrews died, and this was a John Lear story in mine, John asked me, "Would you please put some of my ashes over Area 51, even if it's just reaching over the fence?" So when he passed away, I think it was 94, 95, John Lear rented a helicopter at McCarran. We were both down in San Diego for the funeral. Darlene, his wife, gave us half his ashes. We headed back to Vegas. Next morning we got up. We took the Bell Jet Ranger. We went over by Apex. I mean, bouncing all over the sky. It was about a 30-mile-an-hour wind. And we finally crossed over Hancock Summit. We're in Tippecanoe Valley, and they sent up I think it was a C-18, a C-16 or something like that. It's a Beech 1600. The Guard used them. They used them for hack aircraft, and it was following us. And we got to the north fence line, and there's about a 30-knot wind blowing from the north, and down from the north. So John gets on the radio, and he knows the frequency they monitor, and he said, "Dreamland, Dreamland. This is John Lear and Jim Goodall announcing that John Andrews is on final approach to runway 14 right." And with that, I opened the slider, stuck my hand out, dumped his ashes, and I can see him boom. So John Andrews is scattered all over Area 51.
That's a good place to be. Area 51, I made the mistake years ago with two of my sons when we went up that way, that there's a mailbox on this one road, and if you go past a certain point, you go onto Area 51. And we were on this road, like on the side of a whatever it was. And we went in about a mile and a half, and all of a sudden I started seeing these vehicles coming really fast the other direction. And I had a Chevy Avalanche, and I stuck that thing in reverse and got back out of there really fast. I was worried about getting arrested at that point.
Well, they would impound your car. They would take it to Pinoche, which is 100 miles away. And, of course, they're going to keep you for 2 or 3 days just to irritate the hell out of you. And it's a rent-a-car more than likely, so you're going to have to pay the towing fee, which has got to be an arm and a leg to tow it 100 miles. And you have to get up there somehow, so you have to rent another car. Then you have to pay the fine for being stuck there, and then you have to pay the overages for the days that you kept it. Now, one of the funny things, I don't know if we still have any time at all.
No, we got about 4 minutes.
Yeah, John Lear. I wasn't there for the event because I had things at home. I couldn't get away, but they rented a car from, I think it was Hertz, and they took it out to a dry lake bed, and they wanted to see what a 50 caliber machine gun would do to a modern day automobile, and they just blew the snot out of it. I mean, there was holes over top, the bottom, the sides, everything. I mean, there was nothing to salvage on it. And they when they brought it back to Hertz, they got a flatbed. They hoisted up top of there, took it to Hertz, unloaded it. Of course, they're just absolutely godsmacked. And he had insurance in case the car got totaled. And he said, "What happened? What? My God, what happened?" They said, "I don't know. We had a car parked for dinner in a not so good part of Las Vegas. And we came out, it was gone. And then we were out doing something. We were panicked, and we were looking for it the next day. But about 2 days later, someone said they saw it looked like a new car that had been shot to smithereens. And so that's when they found it. They loaded it and brought it to Hertz." And that's just one of the many crazy things that Lear did.
Yeah, but you left out the part too, because he said they loaded the 50 caliber on a helicopter too, and got it from the sky too.
Yeah, I mean they did so many crazy things. I helped make the fireworks, but I was never at one of Bob Lazar's desert blasts. The first, and it was he wouldn't tell anybody about it until about 2 days before, and then he put it to 24 hours before, because he was getting 1,000 people show up.
Wow!
And the very last one they had one of John's friends was an ATF agent, so he brought him just to make sure everything was in order. They got a 32-gallon fiber barrel from U-Haul or whatever it is, filled it with fertilizer and diesel fuel, and they wanted to see what would happen, because Tim McVeigh had 14 of them in the van. This was only one, and everybody was about a mile away when they detonated it, and the ATF guy was there, so it was everything was in order. He had permission to do it. And the blast was so strong it knocked everybody on their butts, and it caused a small crater on the dry lake bed. So that was one hell of a weapon, that's for sure.
You know, the world lost a big man when they lost John Lear. I'll tell you that.
We were friends for 45 years, and he is one of the most unique individuals I've ever had the experience of hanging with. And you didn't know what he was doing. He was a little bit on the crazy side.
A little bit.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
How about a lot?
A whole bunch. He was just, but I saw him about 3 months before he passed away, and I felt so bad for him. I took a picture of him just because I loved him so much as a friend, but I won't share the picture because he looked so bad.
I will say this, the last couple months, though, he was very coherent, more than he was in the last few years. You know that? Yeah.
And, of course, his wife of 54 years divorced him, or he divorced her, and that was Mira Lee. And that was a shame. And anybody who never had the opportunity, of course, you'll never have it because it's gone, to sit down in John's study. It was about a 20 by 20 room. It had more memorabilia and stuff stuck on the wall. You couldn't see any wall. There's nothing but pictures and documents and everything. And I'm proud to say about 20 of the photos up there were mine. So, but he's missed. He was fun. I had, he's the reason I met Bob Lazar. So it's even more reason that I'm grateful that John Lear came into my life.
All that about a roll of film too, right?
Yep.
Well, hey, Jim, I got to let you go. I just want to say thank you for coming on. Maybe in a few months we can get you back on, especially after you go see, you know who, here up in Seattle.
Yeah.
So,
any time, just have James give me a buzz or drop me a line, and my wife has Alzheimer's because I can't drive. I can't go anywhere anymore. So I'm stuck. I'm here at home. So I'm unless I'm tied up with her or I'm on some other talk show or whatever, talk radio, something. That's the only reason I would say I can't make it today. How about tomorrow? Those types of things. So anytime you want me back, I'd be more than happy to be your guest on your program.
Okay, my friend, you have a great weekend that's coming up, will you?
I will. And you take care. And the hour went by. I mean, it just boom. It was the hour was gone. And those are the type of interviews I love.
Okay,
because they move so fast.
Well, thank you so much. You take care.
I will.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Who do we have tomorrow, JC?
Well, tomorrow I'm going to tell you something. We have the one and only Avi Loeb is going to come on now. Listen, he is from Harvard, professor, and he has done a lot of stuff, written books and investigating these UAPs. And, well, you know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We're going to talk about, well, guess what? The new book has come out. Blues book, too. So it's going to be really interesting tomorrow with Avi. And everybody have a good one. I want to thank you for, being on chat. And we will catch you on the other side tomorrow. Make sure if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do. For all our listeners worldwide that watch the show after it airs, from everywhere from Thailand to Vietnam, Philippines to India to Nova Scotia, I want to thank you so much because you've made us grow. And I'll tell you, we're almost at 133,000 subscribers to this channel. Everybody have a good one. We will catch you tomorrow. By the way, Tom, I saw what you were doing tonight. You take care.
Who's friends with all the night dreamers talking to you at night? Gary on the radio, but maybe he's not in sight. Bigfoot's on his tail, flying UFO's, that's right. Gary's talk show radio, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.